This is my colleague Teodora. I'm Kristin. We're both from the Scalarate team at German Entrepreneurship Asia, and we will guide you today through Germany's startup and innovation ecosystem, shed some light on current trends and opportunities in key industries in the German startup ecosystem, and finally, give you some guidance on what can be your next steps in your expansion if you're considering Europe or specifically the German market. And with that, we can start right away. I give you just a very brief introduction to who we are actually. Scalarate is part of German Entrepreneurship Asia, which is a Singapore-based company. Our aim is to actually connect the innovation ecosystems of Asia and Europe, more specifically Germany. We do this mostly right now with three different market access and market discovery programs, both from Germany to Asia and from Asia, specifically Singapore, to Germany. On the one side, we have the German Accelerator Program, which is funded by the Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs in Germany, to actually help German startups enter Singapore and through that Southeast Asia as a landing pad. Next step is a market discovery program, also for German startups, also funded by the Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs, to actually help German startups get an impression of the most important startup hubs in Asia beyond Singapore. So it can be Singapore, but also India, South Korea, and Japan. Finally, on the other side, we have Scalarate, where Teodora and I are working on. This is actually a customized market exploration and expansion support that we're offering here for Singapore-based startups and SMEs within the Global Innovation Alliance by Enterprise Singapore. And Teodora will further introduce this in a little bit. I will now actually jump right into the overview or introduction to Germany's startup and innovation ecosystem with you. Of course, obviously, Germany is centrally located in Europe, but there are many more things that make it actually an attractive location for your startup to get started or set a foot into Europe. One of these aspects that I want to go through with you is that actually Germany is the world's most innovative economy. One measure to take here is actually one way to measure the innovation index is the patent applications or patent registrations, where actually Germany accounts for a third of all European patent registrations. But of course, also on the corporate side, there's a lot of activity. You see here well-known names such as Bosch and Siemens that are investing billions in German innovation. However, Germany is a very research-focused country. You can see that also in grant schemes that encourage, for example, the collaboration between startups and research institutes in Germany, but also with international players. A very prominent name that you can see here is, for example, Fraunhofer, which is Europe's largest organization for applied research. They actually, many years ago, already developed the MP3 technology, which is a good sign that innovation is nothing new for Germany, but rather a tradition. Lastly, of course, also universities play a huge role, not just in educating talent, especially tech talent, but also in the support for early stage founders through their own business incubation programs. One example here is Unternehmertum, which is one of our partner organizations based in Munich. This is actually Europe's largest center for innovation and business creation at the Technical University of Munich. The Technical University of Munich is one of the most renowned institutes or universities in Germany and even in Europe. Basically, moving on, the drive for innovation makes Germany an economic powerhouse. Through what you see here is actually the traditional sectors like manufacturing, medical technology, insurance, finance. These are all sectors that are now being transformed, especially through digitization. We go from the traditional factories to smart factories. We transform sectors like healthcare and insurance that have a long-lasting tradition in Germany, but are now heavily transformed. So to focus actually on the digitalization of these key industries, the German government launched the Digital Hub Initiative, which comprises 12 different hubs across the country, focusing on different industry verticals. They are bringing together all relevant stakeholders in the respective industries, from startups, but also to investors, corporates, government representatives, and research institutes, but also the SMEs or Mittelstand companies. This also demonstrates that Germany is not just turning around Berlin, but there are other regions or cities that are attractive for local and international startups depending on their industry focus. We look into Munich for mobility and insurance related products or services, Frankfurt, the financial hub, Hamburg for logistics, or Berlin is focusing, for example, on IoT and FinTech. So there are different regions known for different vertical focus areas. And this is important for you actually when you look into the German market where you want to put your strategic location within the country to have access to these stakeholders and of course potential customers, investors, other startups that you want to collaborate with. Besides the overall conditions of Germany, like a thriving economy, there are also other factors that make it a good landing pad for international entrepreneurs. We can take here the examples of global players across industries that are very keen to work with startups to stay ahead in the innovation game. Some do it through their own accelerators. Some actually establish venture client programs like BMW, or some, if you look at Allianz with Allianz X, they have their own VC arm to work with startups and invest in them. We actually, with our previous and current batches of startups in the Scale and Rate program, we have very good experience with these corporates and then many more that are keen to really work with startups, also especially from Singapore, as many of these corporates don't yet have an innovation hub based in Singapore, but actually offer these departments only in the headquarters in Germany. So we are here to liaise between the German parties and the startups in Singapore. Of course, Germany is not only known for these corporates, but actually also for the so-called hidden champions, the Mittelstand companies that are medium-sized companies with a significant local presence in a niche market. And very important here is actually that Germany, very interesting to know, is that Germany is home to 1/3 of the world's hidden champions. Apart from the corporate and SME environment, of course, on every startup's mind are the investors or the investment landscape. Germany actually attracts a huge percentage of the VC money spent in Europe. Among others are the hubs Berlin and Munich. Here, we're actually also working very closely with the business angel clubs. It might sound a bit confusing right now because Scale and Rate is actually working with scale-ups, so companies way beyond the angel investment phase. But we use these angel investors as strategic partners for the startups. They can invest a small amount, have a vetted interest, and actually open doors to their network of high influential people, or maybe they are themselves an owner of a hospital chain or other company that can be an important collaboration partner for your startup. These are some of the reasons why we've chosen actually Berlin and Munich as the first landing pads in Germany for the Scale and Rate program. But there are some more reasons to it. For example, Berlin is also known as Europe's startup capital for the financial backing, but also because of the ease of doing business in the city. If we look into Munich, actually, most of the B2B tech focus and most successful startups are based there. And that's why it's also called Germany's Silicon Valley. It's also important to note that actually foreign and local companies or startups are treated alike in Germany. You don't only have access to talent in Germany, but actually also to talent across Europe. So a huge pool that you can tap into. And of course, only in normal times, but usually it's fairly easy to travel across Europe. Because your journey right now, we looked into the German market specifically, but it shouldn't end in Germany, but actually should just be your starting point in Europe. And you can use Germany as your gateway basically to other European markets. Besides what I just mentioned with the access to a large pool of talent in Germany and in Europe, in other countries, you also have access, of course, to a large pool of customers within a very short distance. We're also very happy that actually last year, the EU-Singapore Free Trade Agreement entered into force right when we launched the Scale and Rate program. And this will further reduce trade barriers, avoid double testing further protect IP, and overall make the trade between Singapore and European countries more efficient and safe. Of course, this was all based on normal times. Now, in times of a global crisis, things obviously change, and that's why we would like to look into the current state of Germany's innovation ecosystem. For that, we can actually take the results of the German Startup Monitor survey with 2,000 startups, 5,000 founders, and over 25,000 employees based in Germany. What we can see here or observe is actually still a quite optimistic view. Startups actually remain and will remain an important employer in the ecosystem. And when we look, for example, into Berlin or Munich, these are regions where actually startups hire actively and plan to hire more employees in the coming year. Then trends actually remain the same and get actually higher priority in the companies, which include, for example, sustainability or tech advancement, especially through AI. What I mentioned before, actually, that there are many foreign companies based in Germany, this also applies to startups. Over 20% of startup founders actually come from abroad, which is a significant amount, and which also shows, for example, that in Berlin, the main work language in startups, around 70%, is English. So it's a good landing pad, definitely also for you as an international startup to get started in the ecosystem. A significant number and very encouraging number is that actually 72% of the startups in Germany are working with established companies, which can be corporates or other larger companies that can be used for pilot projects or also commercial deals. So there's a huge collaboration and definitely a good step for you into the market as well. Finally, what is definitely also showing the optimism in the German ecosystem is that 2 in 3 startups are planning to internationalize despite the crisis. Now, I would actually like to take some time to dive deeper into the specific industries that we are focusing on. This is not an exhaustive list, but some of the key industries that we are actually tackling right now with the Scale Right program and the current batch of startups. We chose these sectors actually based on interesting developments or a good match between Singapore and Germany, but also what are interesting developments now due to COVID. We can start with MedTech digital health. Actually, Germany is Europe's largest healthcare market. We recently published a industry trend report on the healthcare market in Germany, also with testimonials and observations from our previous batch with 2 digital healthcare startups. You can feel free to actually check that out. What's important or interesting about the German healthcare market is also that 100% of the people registered in Germany are insured. On top of that, most of these are actually insured in the public healthcare system, which makes it one of the world's largest public health insurance schemes. Of course, healthcare is having a huge importance right now in times of this crisis, and it also the impact of this is also that there's a huge push and a higher acceptance of telemedicine and digital health solutions in the German market. This can be favored, for example, by the Digital Healthcare Act that allows to prescribe and reimburse medical apps that are patient-facing, and this as the world's first country. This can also, for international startups, actually be a faster way to market and something that we're considering with the previous and current batch of startups. Finally, the most recent development is the Hospital Future Act to heavily invest in digitization and automation in hospitals, which can be, for example, the deployment of robotic systems in hospitals. Another important sector, and I think this is needless to say, is that Industry 4.0 IoT are a key driver for Germany's economic growth. Especially within this sector, machinery and automotive are the largest to deploy such solutions. And this results in Germany actually having the world's 3rd largest concentration of industrial robots. In times of crisis, but even before, actually there was a huge focus on, or it has been a huge focus on increasing the level of automation and remote processes. The final sector I would like to touch on is FinTech and InsurTech, definitely two areas that are on the rise in Germany, both in terms of the number of startups, but also the investment in the scene. There is a geographic distribution. For example, Munich and Cologne are known for the insurance sectors. Munich alone, for example, has over 100 insurance companies, being home to local players such as Munich Re, but also international giants like Allianz and Generali. We look for FinTech actually more into Berlin, especially with the amount of FinTech investments that go into that area, and Frankfurt, of course, as the banking and financial hub. Investments mainly go into the subcategories, FinTech subcategories of banking, payments, and InsurTech. An important note that I would like to make here is actually that the FinTech services or offerings that you provide in Germany can actually, in certain cases, also be passported, meaning that you can also offer them in other European countries, starting from Germany. If we look into the sectors actually that are mostly invested in banking, of course, needless to say, is a highly regulated area. For example, through the BaFin, which is the regulatory body for this. But we're working with FinTech startups and local experts in Germany that have been going through these BaFin licenses many times and know the ins and outs and what are the concrete steps you have to take and what you need to be aware of to make this a smooth process, or even consider alternatives. Maybe you don't need your own license, but go to a fronting bank and use their license to enter the market faster. Overall, we would just like to let you know that actually regulators in Germany compared to other European countries are quite advanced, very startup friendly to make this process as stressless as possible for you. If we go into payments for the final point, actually COVID has had a high impact on this area in Germany. There is a push for contactless and cashless solutions, which is a big change in the German market, definitely. I can say as a German, paying in cash has been the norm, but now I guess the next time I will go to Germany, this will look very different. Of course, this has not been an exhaustive list of industries and related trends, but we hope you find the German market attractive for your startup. And if so, of course, what are the next steps now when you prepare for expansion? What do you need to consider? And with that, I would actually like to hand over to my colleague, Teodora.
Thank you, Kristin, for the sneak peek of the latest developments in key industries in Germany, which is really all those opportunities are great. And many international startups can benefit from all the developments in those industries in Germany. Expanding to new markets involves a greater understanding of the market growth rates, as well as the new projections and how the outlook of how the industry will look like, also forecasted demand. And this is on top of the mandatory understanding of the customer segment. This is particularly important when you are moving to a relatively undefined market. That's why we designed Scalarate, which is to really help Singaporean startups and small and medium-sized enterprise to fast-track their German expansion plans. What is Scalarate? Scalarate is a partner of the Global Innovation Alliance, which is an initiative led by Enterprise Singapore. We are their trusted market partner for the German expansion, along with our partners covering major markets in Europe and the US. What is actually the Scalarate? Scalarate offers customized market exploration and expansion services for startups depending on their market readiness. We provide them with market insights. As you can see, Kristin was able to mention some key insights for you from the leading industry, but actually we work very, very close with leading industry players, which is providing us with a great understanding of the problem areas and respectively opportunities for Singaporean startups, and we are able to communicate this with our community here. We support startups in building their go-to-market understanding and strategy, because capturing an opportunity requires a deliberate strategy and great understanding of the market. We also help you to get matched with potential customer and partners because getting in touch with the right decision maker, getting a faster feedback for your product probably is the most important part of the customer journey, of the startup journey. And moreover, for startups, time is probably the biggest asset. We also help you to establish your presence on the ground when it comes everything to administratively set up, hiring people, of manage your operation on the ground. And this is an initiative launched exclusively for Singaporean startups. And I can share a little bit more for the exact ways we are providing this support to startups. So how we support startups? We design various services designed towards the company readiness for expansion on the German market. Scale Explore is focusing on startups who are taking their first steps into the German market, and we help them to answer the key question: is actually Germany is Germany a good market for them? Can they serve this market, and how their financials will look like if they expand actually to Germany? We provide support to the startups for a period of 10 weeks here in Singapore, where we work with experts one-on-one with them. And then we travel to Germany when of course travel is allowed, where we help them to meet their customers, meet and visit the most important and interesting digital hubs for them. As you saw, there are different regions in Germany are covering, and they have strength in different sectors. So then we work with the companies on the ground. Scale Expand is actually a program which is targeting startups who are ready to take the leap into the German market. And we help them in not only building their go-to-market strategy, but actually executing this on the ground. The duration of this program is we work with the teams here for about 4 weeks in Singapore, and then we support the execution on the ground. I can provide you with a little bit more details on actually how we do this and example of startups we are working with in the next couple of slides. Scale Explore program is designed to support startup in the initial understanding of the German market. And here I would like to share that despite that the program is designed to have a partially German part in the market during 1 week in Germany, we were happy to say that and share that despite of the COVID, our startups are able to benefit from this initiative. And I can just share with you a little bit more about our experience. We launched the Scale program in January this year, and we started working with startups in March, just before the lockdown in Germany. And this was the phase when the startup are speaking to a lot of potential customers, experts on the ground, with people who are helping them to understand for us actually the exact decision maker from a large company to speak to learn how to structure their team, to learn who is the right stakeholder for them for go-to-market strategy. Is it a local partner? Is it a startup? Is it a consultancy company? Is direct sale probably the best option for them? Will this allow them scalability and understanding the German regulatory affairs? And all this we were able to conduct online and virtually. Our partners, our stakeholders, our experts on the ground were very, very receptive and open to speak to the startups. And they were even able to launch and start pilot discussions for potential partnerships. Probably sometimes now we are asking, okay, how a pilot could be discussed and launched virtually, actually sharing, exchanging samples over mail, or even like providing digital demo version of the product actually is not an obstacle to discuss commercial opportunities. Once we finish here with exploring and shaping the go-to-market strategy in Singapore, once the travel allows, we'll be able to travel to Germany and help the startups to organize one-on-one meetings on the ground. Moving forward to the next services we're providing for startups, designed for startups who are a little bit more advanced in their market understanding. We provide them with services under the umbrella of the Expand, Scale Expand. And what we do is, probably you can see here, there is a very long process in a way. of engagement with the startup. So we start with the overall program will last for 4 weeks in Singapore and 12 weeks on the ground. But we can see before there is a lot of alignment between us and the teams who are willing to explore the German market with us. And the reason behind is that we would like to make sure that there is a potential opportunity for the team on the German market. We want to pre-engineer the potential journey of the startups on the German market and map all the resources needed to support them on the ground. What we do actually is we speak and try to find the key opinion leaders and experts from the particular field the startup is coming from, and then compose an initial team which is going to support the startup on the ground. So those are experts, for example, who are going to provide quick access to decision makers. Those are experts who are experienced in certain fields in sales, for example, or integration. So those are people who are going to give leverage on the company on the ground and the necessary branding which every new startup, new market player is entering in Germany. Then we continue with onboarding process, where actually we align between us, the experts, and the team, what are the objectives, and how we can actually support this on the ground. This is gradually moving into the next phase, when we start the initial validation of the market, aligning the resources, and preparing the team to land in Germany. Again, just before to continue the actual execution of the program, we make sure we have clear targets, clear objectives, so we know how to support the team better, and the team is getting support from the expert during the whole program duration. The execution phase in Germany is really dependent on the company objectives. Let's say if the company has an objective to start a pilot in a hospital, or to launch their solution in 3 factories, or to work with, let's say, 2 banks in Germany, we can design the program according to those milestones. Quite often companies at that stage, they may require even to look for acquisition leads and targets in the country, to acquire potential smaller companies who can help them and ensure faster scaling on the market. Some of them probably may have a focus on establishing a local research department. We have seen also companies who are requiring heavily support in local hiring and talent acquisition. This, of course, comes with the support of an office space for them for the duration of the 12 weeks. Also, we can also support with junior assistants on the ground to help them with the execution and aligning with the rest of the experts. And this is really, again, designed to help the startup to meet the objectives. What our startups have to say, you can see from we are very proud to work with those 10 Singaporean deep tech startups who are providing solution in the smart cities areas, in the digital health, also as well as FinTech regulations, RegTech, and media technologies. What they have to say about our program, and actually where we probably support and where we help startups most. This is in the Scale-Rate Explore stage again. I will probably going to highlight some of those aspects. I think that what we bring on the table here is that it's a shorter market analysis time, and the more important part is really getting the fast feedback for your product from the right decision maker. Sometimes it takes weeks, not even months, to go through or navigate, let's say, through a large corporate and understand actually who is the buying, who has the buying power, who has the decision-making power. And another probably benefit we're bringing on the ground here is helping some of the startups also to review and revise their current business model and market and even pricing strategy, because they're exposed to a new set of customers and they have a more visibility on the way they have to price globally or locally. I'm just going to touch very little on our network. You can see a couple of logos here on the slide, but this is not limited. It's not limiting our network. As Kristin also mentioned, we are working very, very closely with all the leading corporates in Mittelstand on the ground to retrieve problem statements and opportunities for our startups. We have the government support. when it comes to understanding which are the relevant funds and incentive for the startups to incorporate in Germany. Also, we're working very closely with investors, not only from the investment potential, provide investment opportunities, but also great connections, startups who are actually a great partner for our teams when it comes to go to market and leveraging the technology of existing companies on the market, associations which play a major role in the German ecosystem, and a really great way to go to market. With this, I would like probably to highlight also the next dates we are going to intake and start working with companies. For the Accelerate Explore program, we are aiming to start in February, May, and September. As you can see, we have 3 opportunities for startups to start and exploring the market with us. Again, the earlier you start in your exploration, the more precise will be your landing on the market, where the Expand program actually has flexible dates. With this, I would like to thank you really for your time, and don't miss our Fireside Chat with the great speakers we have today. This is Dr. Jack Tan. He's the Chief Medical Officer of TeleMedC, one of our startups, and Andreas Schmidt, who is the CEO of Proteona. He's also an expert and mentor at Accelerate, and they're going to share about their tips and experience on scaling into the German market. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone, and please welcome to our Fireside Chat. We're going to speak about how to successfully expand to a new market, and particularly in Germany. As I just mentioned, we have 2 great speakers here. This is Dr. Jack Tan and Andreas Schmidt. As I said before, Jack is one of our startups, and we are very proud to work with him. And Andreas is one of our mentors. I would like to give you the floor for you to introduce yourself. Andreas, as I said, he's CEO of Proteona, which is a precision medicine company with offices here in Singapore and in Germany. Andreas, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, sure. Thanks a lot for inviting me. I think the topic of the panel very much fits to what we are doing. As you said correctly, Proteona is a precision medicine company combining single-cell multi-omics to have real impact on pharma trials, on patients. For the last 10, 11 years, I go back and forth between Singapore and Germany. Even with my first company, this is now my second one. So I'm excited to be on the panel to share insights of my lessons learned. And I think actually this bridge between Germany and Singapore in business development, in exchanging market views and building up companies with both pillars is by now actually pretty established. And I'm very excited to get into that. Thank you.
Thank you, Andreas. I'm very glad to have you here. Jack, to you. Jack is, as I said, he's the CEO of TeleMedC. Actually, congratulations, Jack.
Thank you.
TeleMedC was selected as the most investable company at Slingshot. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So we were very, very proud to have really won this little prize, but it means something a lot. In fact, it means a lot to me. I'm a medical doctor by training. I did my postgraduate studies in public health and kind of met the CEO of TeleMedC through research in the hospital some years back. And after that, I've been really enjoying the growth of this company. Our company is involved in AI for ophthalmic, that means eye technology for screening mass populations, especially for what we call primary eye care. So business-wise, I've been quite fortunate that I've had 2 exits so far. One for my medical business, and the other one was an IPO about 3 years ago that we had a pharmaceutical and logistics kind of setup that we managed to list on the Singapore Exchange. So I've been fairly fortunate so far. And for this startup, it's a brand new experience for me. And I've been doing this for the past 3.5 years. I think it has been really a very, very, very interesting experience. And very thankful to Teodora, and the German Accelerator experience that we have Scalar 8 to bring us to Germany, finally, and even in this COVID time. Yes.
Thank you, Jack. And actually, I would like to ask you, actually, can you share your experience a little bit? First of all, why you chosen Germany as a market for you? You're operating on the US market, in the Singaporean market, you have certain traction also in Asia. First of all, why Germany? And if you can share a little bit about your experience, because launching a new product or a healthcare medical product on a new market is actually quite a complex journey. So if you can share a little bit more about why Germany and share about your experience as a startup and probably your advice to startups, what they have to consider.
I think, firstly, we were offered the Scalar 8 program because of my relationship with Enterprise Singapore. I think they were fairly upfront in offering and saying that, hey, why not look at Germany? And so we did a little bit of research. At the same time, our startup already has the CE mark, which means that we are ready to go into Europe in a way. Naturally, we had a little bit of trepidation. We sort of thinking the language is a problem, right? But we had Singapore, such close links with UK, and why not UK? In fact, my daughter's studying in UK. I was thinking, and then Brexit came, right? And naturally, German came to the forefront. I think that Germany is very similar to Singapore in terms of certain positive work attitude, ethics, the level of transparency and compliance is very much what our company sort of represents. And of course, there's a downside, which is the difficulty in entering. But I think you can spin it differently and see positively and say that, if I can enter, then maybe there won't be so many competitors as well. So we saw it, we saw the glass half full rather than half empty and took the plunge. I think thank you to, again, like I said, to Scalar 8 and the team, the wonderful team there. We managed to find some university and corporate partners there as well. And we sort of look into some of this available funding and the opportunities that came along. And I think we just grabbed them. And it's been a very fruitful discussion so far. We are establishing our office as of now. So I think very, very happy so far that we've managed to get this far, even in this COVID times.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, when we started working together, it was just before.
Just before, yeah. We were planning the German trip.
Yeah, probably I think this was such a good experience in a way that actually business was almost as usual, and people became like still open to discuss for new innovative solutions given the hard situation. Andreas, I would like also to ask you a little bit more to share your experience about. You've been successful in both in Singapore and Germany, but from your perspective, and your advice to Singaporean startups, can you share a little bit more about your experience in growing a company actually in Germany?
Yeah. I think if you start a company in Singapore, and actually both my companies started in Singapore, you have this unique challenge that you have to think about internationalization pretty early, because it's clear your homegrown market is not that big. And I think Germany in both times, and I'll also recommend it to lots of other startups, is a good and stable market. Like, let's take Proteona, our current company. The second largest market worldwide for blood cancer is actually Germany. And that is the amount of money involved in healthcare treatments. And then if you calculate the entire German-speaking world, including like Germany, Switzerland, and Austria, it's a really relevant market with a lot of the counterparts like big pharma companies as well as medtech companies being established there. I think a good reason for this bridge of business relationships between Germany and Singapore is a simple one. It works. So you don't need to worry about the hassles of IP protection, about legal misunderstandings. I think Germany is a pretty mature market where a lot of these things have been established actually in a good way. And particularly if I'm in this now for the last 10 years, building up businesses between Germany and Singapore. And a lot of these things have been established on a government level, on a business association level. So you don't need to rediscover the world, but actually can follow things that were established already. And that was a good experience with my first company, Ioxa. It's again a good one with Proteona. And also the excitement, for example, on the level of clinical doctors in working on really clinical projects was a very good one. I was surprised how many friendly ties are already established even on that level.
I agree. Definitely very positive when we come to working with the doctors in Germany as well. You know, that we had very frank conversations. I mean, being myself a clinical doctor, I think both the research institutes as well as the corporate partners are very proper. They have good governance, you know. Our experience with the lawyers there are very positive, and setting up the company has been pretty straightforward so far. So I think there are very, very good things and very transparent in the processes. And that is very easy for startups and not to trip. I think that there's always a danger that, you know, you go into a place, not going to name names, right? But places that are cowboy lands, and definitely Germany's not one of them. Germany is amazing. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so I think for early startup, it's all about focus on getting the one story right, getting your one first customer that's significant, that's showcasing what you can do as a startup, that gives you credibility in the world. And I think that can really be an example that comes from Germany. I remember it's my first company. Eventually, there was a double page in Zeiss, in the Zeiss internal magazine. One employee of Zeiss, the great optics and microscopy company, and one of our team members, basically interviewing each other on how to work together. And that stamp of approval, I think, opened markets also elsewhere. And that is something that also you can translate to markets in China or in the US and say, okay, this collaboration worked. Can we use this as a blueprint? And I think that's the way how you should approach Germany. Not how do you cover the entire German market fastest, but how do you create the cool story that's your stamp of approval to then go wherever you want.
That's true. Given especially the industry you're operating, when you have to work together and align so many stakeholders from government to hospitals to pharma companies, the stakeholder management, I would say, is like quite a difficult task, but not impossible. This is what our mentors keep saying. Germany is a tough market, but not impossible. Yeah. And when you make it, actually, as you said, Andreas, it can help you to scale to Switzerland and to other European countries. Jack, you just mentioned that successfully you were speaking to some corporates and also to research hospitals, university hospitals in Germany. Quite often we've been asked why German corporate or German investors are going to work with a Singaporean company, given that the proximity of local companies really making life a little bit more easier. What is your opinion and your experience to both of you, actually? Is there any barriers or like what are the advantages of the Singaporean startups on the German market?
I think the advantage of us is that we have already done some of the validations, and you know it is, of course, CE mark is just a basic validation and regulatory approval. To go into a market, you always need a local validation studies, and of course we have to partner the local partners in the institutions like the academia type. That was really good because you recommended one of the mentors, right, recommended us, and through his personal connections, we got in touch, and they were very enthusiastic about it. And even up to now, we are still having very fruitful conversations, and we are going to move forward with some concrete proposals. The difficulty, I guess, is that what stage of the development is this company? So if the startup is not ready to enter the German market, then you may have some pushbacks in terms of the believability and whether this can work in Germany. I guess the Germans are very proud of their technology and their advancements and engineers that are the most tip-top. And you know, we have to get at a certain level to deal with the German market. That's what I have experienced so far. I think we had to beef ourselves up a little bit and say, yes, I am good enough for German market. Yeah, that's kind of the experience that we have. I think regulatory is very tough. The reimbursement market, to get into the reimbursement market, such as Germany, is also a challenge because there are many steps to it, and you have to take a medium to long term view to enter this market.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, there are the things that probably also answer the question, what startups need to prepare before going to a new market. There's so many areas they need to validate before they make a decision. And probably to you, Andreas, could you share a little bit more about the challenges you observed, because you're mentoring some of our startups. You're also understand very well the differences between the Singapore and the German market. What are some of the main challenges and the startups need to look and to overcome, and some tips to resolve it? You just mentioned just now that having a success stories or use case or showcase is probably the most important starting point. But any other advice you would like to share?
I think we were moving towards this direction already. What works very well is under promise, over deliver in Germany. So, I mean, just show hard facts, and it's not a long negotiation there. If you can convince like one of these hidden champion companies, I mean, I used Zeiss as an example, but it can be many others. I think convincing with good hard fact data is always a good way into any conversation in Germany. And also, I think you have to understand where German investors and German companies also come from. All of them know that they have, I mean, Germany is an export country, and Germany needs to have a smart strategy to address Asia. And for a lot of companies, I mean, they have a lot of very good ties to the US, but not as good ones to Asia. And again, if I talk to, for example, VC firms in Germany, as well as corporate investors or corporate companies, it's actually very attractive to have a smaller investment in Singapore and learn from that. And basically also have this as their internal platform to get introduced to their partners there in Asia, but still do it in a way that is very straightforward. And I think we all know, obviously, China is growing, it's important, and every large corporate has to come up with a strategy of how to be there. But probably having a step in between with Singapore makes a lot of sense. And you can offer something as a Singapore company. You will have much more insights into ASEAN as well as Chinese markets. How you will have different networks. You have a network to Asian investors. You bring something to the table beyond like your technology and product. And I think a lot of companies, a lot of Singapore companies are not aware of that. And if you look back, my first company created quite some excitement in Germany, also because it was a deep insight of our investors into, okay, this is how things run in Asia, and this is a network we can dip into.
I mean, it's also a matter of building a global company, and I guess it's not about just choosing the right market, but how you manage distributed teams and businesses at several countries. To both of you, probably just apart from the German market, we're talking about startups and they're working at scale rate with startups who are there scaling and rapid scaling phase. Any advice you would like to share with us from your experience about running a global company and things probably they have to be looked? To you, Jack.
Me first. Well, I'm still trying to work really hard towards a global company. We are trying to work really hard to meet and network like crazy, you know. And I think having an accelerator and having mentorship is very helpful. We are on the budget, especially if you fly and you stay in hotels and it's going to cost you money. So this, in fact, this crisis has given us quite a bit of opportunity as well. Because I think, for example, we met a very experienced key opinion leader, I think from Scalar 8, and it was really good. I mean, he had the right connections and got us where we want to go. It's both a blessing and a curse, I guess. You know, if you talk about going too many places, but for a startup, it's sometimes hard to focus, and it is really what grabs you first, right? And we were also in one or two markets where we thought we had it and then realized that not really. So I think it'd be good to have a systematic approach in going into that market. And I think having an accelerator and mentorship is useful. That's my advice.
Thank you.
I mean, we all talk about deep tech startups that are deeply rooted in biotechnology or medical technology. And for early companies, it's all about technology and proving this technology works and is really cool. And you have to get this shift right, that all of a sudden everything is about communication. If you miss, it doesn't matter how good your technology is if you can't communicate it well. And communicating it in different markets will require different ways of doing that. And I think that's something you have to put a lot of your management work into. And all of a sudden, this will be more than your technology development work. Acknowledging that early, I think, is crucial. And then something I think we hinted on now already several times is focus. It's so easy to lose focus. And often it doesn't matter if you're in the biggest market, in the biggest market segment. It's about getting your first customer right and getting this first customer happy that tells another 10 customers that tell another 10 customers. So I would not really look into like strategic thinking of which market is slightly bigger and how to create the marketing material for it, but rather who are your next repeat customers that love what you are doing and will do the marketing for you.
And probably this is also helpful to, I'm just looking at the questions. One of the questions is actually, as a Singaporean founder, how can you go about fostering collaboration with German companies? And probably I can just rephrase this a little bit, and because this is also a very common question. Do you need a local representative? Do you need a German-speaking representative? Do you need an ambassador on the market to really open doors? So probably your experience to both of you, Andreas.
I think at some level, yes, you do. I mean, sure, depends a bit on like what business you are in. If you sell like more actually to a medical community, I think it's helpful to have somebody who is also German speaking. If it's really like a science product, for example, maybe you can even get away with not speaking German at all. Independent of if your counterpart can certainly speak English. I think there are plenty of people actually that have experience in Singapore that go back to Germany that you can actually catch up with and see if they actually are really excited to be part of doing that. So over the last 10 years, I saw there's a growing number of people that actually love to be these bridge builders, and getting one or two of them involved just makes things easier. Because it's not just a language, it's really like the cultural way of how do I negotiate, how do I get things done, how do I present myself to get the next contract. And I think by now there's a good infrastructure from Enterprise Singapore, from, Scalar 8, that's what we are talking about. EDB has plenty of offices. Depending on like your maturity of the company, I think it's very well established how you can find people that can support you in this.
Yeah, I think that finding the right person to open doors for you and to do warm introductions and help you to navigate, I guess, is a key, and identifying local champion, I believe. But I think that probably to you, Jack, but I think that you already answered this question.
Yeah.
I don't think that there is a language barriers here or issues. And the second question, it's also interesting because it's another question we often get. For both of you, when did you knew that Germany is the right market? I guess, Andreas, for you, I guess it's a natural answer. Probably to you, Jack. I mean, how fast you can evaluate a market opportunity, and second will be when do you have to start to research on a new market? Meaning is that if you're planning for a new market, how much time you have to calculate and put to research on a new market? And how quickly you can make a decision?
Very tough question. So I'll try to answer that as best as I can. Firstly, I think German market is a mature market. So it depends on the product fit. So I'm looking at the product fit, whether it is right. So for my product, for example, it suits an aging population. and looking at the demographics and the epidemiology of diseases. From my medical standpoint, I would say, yes, my product fits Germany to the T, And of course, then you do a SWOT and you look at what is the competition there and all that, and is there enough automation on the ground? So from that point of view, I think it's very personal, it's very product specific, and having the right partners is very important. I think we have more or less found those pieces that I wanted to put in place. And so it was then we decided that, yes. So it wasn't very long ago. we found the right partners, and with the conversation and, with every meeting, you sort of become more and more familiar with the parties, and that becomes that stamp of approval. Yeah.
Well, I think that really, really, thank you for the great insights. And I think that also to our audience, I think that learning from startups and other people who went through this journey is probably the best insight you can get and the fastest way to learn about the market. Really, thank you for your time, and wish you all the best in the new years. And please reach out to us if you have any questions for Scalarate or for the German market. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.